Welcome to this bonus live private training, Monetize the Mic as a guest expert without the hassle or the hustle of doing it yourself. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So we are Jess and Margy, and we are committed to helping entrepreneurs scale their business by leveraging strategic visibility and networking. We are the co-owners of Interview Connections, the first and leading podcast booking agency. So go ahead and put yourself in the chat. What is your business? And I want to hear where is your visibility on a scale of 1 to 10? So go ahead and share that in the chat now. I want to learn a little bit more about where you all are at in scaling your business. So just take a moment, share in the chat your website, your business, what do you do, and rate your visibility on a scale of 1 to 10. Go ahead. I'll just give it a moment so we can introduce everyone. I see we have Scott here, Peg. So we've got Scott of scottproposky.com with a couple different amazing businesses and a book coming out. Thanks for being here, Scott. I also see we have Michelle and Karen and Peg. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and let us know, where do you feel like your visibility is right now? 10 being the highest, 1 being nobody knows you. Go ahead and share in the chat right now where your visibility is on a scale of 1 to 10. We have Peg, who is a communications coach and marketing strategist, Duchess Enterprise, and she's at a 6. Michelle from Minneapolis, Good Grief Parenting. I support bereaved parents who are raising bereaved siblings after child loss, at about a 2. Scott's at a 4. We have Karen, Journey Beyond Divorce, at a 7, with podcast being a huge part of that. Awesome. Yes, I love that you guys are obviously leveraging podcast guesting, so that visibility number will only go up. So thank you so much for sharing all of that in the chat. All right. So every entrepreneur here at this private training has been invited and approved by us. So this is a smaller private training because it's by invite only. This is an advanced training on how to monetize the mic, our 3-part framework. So it is invitation only. So we're so excited to have you here. So there's a couple different types of entrepreneurs that find themselves ready to do podcast guesting. All right. So I want to go through a couple different levels of business. So you can kind of identify where you might be on this spectrum, right? So we have entrepreneurs that are hovering around the 6-figure mark. Maybe you are close to hitting 6 figures. Maybe you've hit it before and then your revenue goes down a little bit, but you're kind of hovering around that level. And your clients love you and they know your service is amazing. You know your service is amazing, but outside of your client base, not many people know who you are. And you know you need to build your brand as an expert in order to grow your business to the next level. Or you're here, perhaps you're mid to high 6 figures and you are on the cusp of breaking through to $1 million in annual revenue. And you've grown your business through referrals, through networking and organic marketing. And you know that in order to hit 7 figures, you need more traffic. You're like, I've got a great offer. I have a great service. I know I have gotten myself visible as best as I can to the people that are in my network, but now it is time to get more traffic. It's time to get in front of other people's audiences. That is the key of going from high 6 past the 7-figure mark. Or you're here. You've built a successful 7 or 8-figure company, and you know you need a personal brand to future-proof your business, but you don't know where to start. And what I mean by future-proofing your business is when you have a 7 or 8-figure company, typically you're at the level where you have this successful business and now maybe you're getting into becoming a serial entrepreneur. You have other businesses that you want to start. And if you don't have a personal brand, it's difficult to then detach yourself from this initial company that you are running. So by building a personal brand, you're able to future-proof your entrepreneurial success. You can go off and start multiple businesses and be successful so much faster because you have that personal brand. People know who you are, not just who your company is. And so if you're at that level where you're at 7 or 8 figures and you know you need that personal brand in order to grow and future-proof your business, but you might not know where to start. Or you are launching a new business in a new industry, but everyone still associates you with your first company. So we see this a lot. We have some clients that are real estate investors or have real estate businesses, and they want to start new businesses, but everyone still categorizes them as the real estate person, right? So building up a personal brand gives you that insurance policy to launch new ventures and have people identify you with your personal brand and not with the first business that you started. And everyone wants to massively increase their visibility and impact. So you intuitively know that you should be getting on podcasts to share your story, right? Yeah, that is why you're here. That is why you are doing podcast interviews. That is why you're here at this training. You know you need to share your story, and you know that increasing your visibility is the next step for you and your business. But finding and pitching podcasts yourself or hiring, training, and managing an employee to book you is an energy suck, right? It's really difficult to hire and train someone to do something that you haven't done before, that you don't know how to do. It's a lot of work. And you're following other entrepreneurs who seem to be everywhere. I know that when your visibility is lower and you're working, like you're researching and you're getting out there and you're trying to figure out how to grow, you see other entrepreneurs that seem to be everywhere. Like their visibility seems to be a 10 out of 10, right? They show up on your social media feeds constantly. They're featured on a different podcast every single week. And you're wondering how to create those same results without adding another task to your already full schedule. And how do you actually monetize it, right? You might be able to get on a couple shows, but then how do you monetize it? Or how do you get on those shows? And you want to make your visibility a 10 out of 10. That is what you are here for. That is your goal. And you want to figure out how to do that and how to make it happen. So today we are going to show you how to get in front of new audiences every single week, massively multiply your impact as a thought leader, and turn your visibility into multiple years of compounding revenue. And I want to take a moment to explain what we mean by compounding revenue, because this is a huge, very important factor that you get with podcast guesting. So just to share my brief story, I created the podcast booking industry in 2013 when I started Interview Connections. I have been getting interviewed on podcasts consistently for 8 years. And so there are podcast interviews that I've done years ago that people still find, listen to, and reach out. So they are working for me without me continually doing those same interviews over and over again, right? So when you do a ton of interviews, there's an opportunity to take your foot off the gas pedal every so often because you have all these interviews out there working for you. It's like investing. When you invest your money smartly, it works for you, right? You want your money to work for you. And when you guest on podcasts consistently long term, that visibility works for you long term. So that's how to turn your visibility into multiple years of compounding revenue is when you do enough, it's like building this snowball and it continues to roll and get bigger and bigger and bigger because as people are searching for the information that you teach about, they're finding your interviews in their searches. But that only happens if you do enough of them. So it's important to commit to this strategy long term. So before we dig in, I want to show you the results that are possible for your business when you leverage the power of strategic visibility and monetization. Oftentimes, when I am having consults with entrepreneurs who want to work with us at Interview Connections and get booked on podcasts, and I ask, what are your goals? What are the results that you want to achieve? Typically, they say brand awareness. I want more leads. I want more revenue. And when I say, well, how much revenue? How many clients? And they say, I don't know. You tell me. I don't know what's possible. And so, one really important way to see more results is getting clear on what you want. And what can be really helpful is actually seeing what other people have done, right? Seeing what's possible based off of what other people have done. So I want to share these results with you so you can imagine, oh my God, I could do that because she has done that or he has done that, right? So let's go through a couple of examples. So we have Amy La Liberty. She is a virtual CFO. So before monetizing the mic, Amy's marketing was inconsistent and nothing was sticking, right? She didn't have the bandwidth herself or her team to really go all in. And she knew that by just committing to doing podcast guesting, it would bring her the results that she was looking for. And so 1 month after Amy started being interviewed on podcasts, a listener reached out and signed up for her $15,000 program. And so she gave, and I just want to give a little bit of the strategy of how she did this. So number one, Amy is a great guest. So that's important, delivering a really great interview, having clarity and conviction around your values and who you serve, why you serve those clients, and what your story is to build credibility. She was doing all of that in her interviews. And she gives a call to action. I think it's to, her Facebook group, her community, right? She's driving listeners to join her in a free offer. This particular listener was so connected with what she was saying that they went to her website, found her contact form, reached out to her, got on a consult call, and I think signed up within a few days. And it was just such a great story because it just shows you that when you go out there, knowing that it will work, trusting the process, kind of firing on all fronts, right? Being a great guest, sharing your story, over delivering with value, giving a free, simple call to action, there will be listeners who are just like, I'm ready to buy. And they'll find you, right? So that is one thing that's possible, right? Within just a few interviews, she's like, okay, that was worth it. And she's got a whole year of interviews coming for her. So that's one possibility is truly making, back most of your investment in just one sale. Stacey Brown Randall is an entrepreneur. She's a business coach who works with typically business owners who have letters after their name, think lawyers, accountants, therapists, things like that. So she's been working with us for multiple years. And when she came to us, she had a new course. She teaches these business owners how to generate referrals without asking. And so she had this course and she needed a way to promote it and gain new clients consistently. So maybe that's you. Maybe you have a course or a program or a book, you have an offer that you need to gain visibility for, because there's nothing like launching a new program and then having nobody know about it, right? It's sort of like you put all this work into this product, this course, this program, and then nobody knows about it. So she came to podcast guesting because she knew that in order to launch her course, she had to be in front of new audiences, and she had to get in front of audiences that needed what she was selling. So she committed to podcast guesting, and now she has built relationships with podcast hosts who have become affiliate partners for her course. And she's also attracted dozens of new qualified leads to her Facebook group and has closed new clients into her program. So when you have a course or a program or a service, it's really smart to have some type of referral program or affiliate program. And so she will consistently not only, again, over deliver in value, share her story, give a great call to action, she will build relationships with the hosts. She will ask them, would you like to become an affiliate partner of my course? And typically with a course, you can give, 50% commission because it's, you create it and then it's like passive revenue after that. I wouldn't necessarily recommend 50% commission on, a labor intensive service, but with a course, you can offer a generous commission to the hosts. And many of them will say yes. Some will say no, because some people just don't, they don't do affiliate partnerships. But a lot of hosts became her affiliate partner. And because they were able to generate commission on any sales of her course that came from her podcast interview on their show, they were motivated to promote it. So they would overly promote her episode. They would do joint venture webinars with her, which led to multiple new clients into her program. So this strategy works really well. So we book her on strategic, targeted podcasts, and then she's really focused on asking the host to become an affiliate for her. So again, remember, it's all about the host relationships. They have a lot of opportunities for you. Nagina Abdullah is a health coach. So Nagina came to us. She had already been using guest podcasting for a couple of years, but wasn't being consistent, right? So that might be you. You might have been doing podcast guesting, but not consistently. Maybe you've done a few interviews here and there. Maybe over the last year, you've been on like 5 to 10. But if you're not consistent, it's really difficult to have results that will stick. And she wasn't generating as many leads as she knew she could be. We're going to talk about this in a few moments with our Monetize the Mic 3-part framework. But if you're not being consistent and you don't have a clear monetization strategy, doing a few interviews here and there is not going to drive results. So once Nagina started getting booked consistently on targeted podcasts and getting support with monetizing, right? So, we do interview audits with her. We'll give her specific tweaks. And she's so great because she trusts the process. Like, she knows that podcast guesting will work. And, you'll see here that she had been doing podcast guesting for a while and it wasn't working. She didn't say, oh, this doesn't work. She said, what can I do to make this better? Like, what's in my control? And what was in her control was to make the investment to get it done consistently. So number one, making sure somebody was getting her booked on podcasts every single week. And then the support to make sure she was giving the right call to action, that the way she was talking about her work and her program was effective. And now, she's generated two high ticket clients, but actually more, because she just shared with us the other day that, several more clients in her high ticket program. She has a $12,000 program, have come from podcast interviews. So again, it's this snowball, right? When you trust the process, when you have the strategy and support, when you're being consistent, then the results just snowball. So now it's like, it's just continuing to grow, and the momentum and the results just keep going up, up, and up. Jack and Michelle Bosch are real estate investors. So they are in that 8-figure level where they have a very successful business. This, for them, it's not about like, oh, we need more money to pay the bills. Like, they're doing very well with their business, but they are really driven to help people learn how to invest in land and in real estate so they can change their lives. And so they have an incredible course that gives people everything they need to know to start investing and flipping land and truly changing lives. When you just flip through their social media, Instagram stories, it's just testimonial after testimonial of these incredible stories of people that have taken their course and literally have changed their life with what they've learned. And so they knew that in order to really get more visibility for this course that they have and this program to teach other people about real estate, they knew they needed to get visibility, but they weren't really sure how to start. They had their own podcast, but as far as getting booked, it wasn't really getting done consistently. They also had their assistant booking them for a little while. I remember they said, we had Barbara pitching us, but the thing is, Barbara and many other admin assistants, they're administrative assistants, and the work of finding shows and pitching and being strategic with how a pitch is written and following up, that is a very different skill set. And so they got to the point where they realized, okay, this is not something our internal team can really do and do effectively. So they committed to our program and they've generated over $250,000 in sales from their podcast guest appearances. And this also comes, so it's not just the consistency, but it's also the strategy, right? So they're real estate investors. So they get interviewed on a lot of real estate podcasts. And so I remember it was like after, 6 months or a year or so, Jack was like, okay, I've been on a lot of real estate podcasts. Like what else, what else is out there? And so we brainstormed and we strategized. And so we saw, people that want to make more money, they're listening to podcasts that are going to help them make more money. So we started actually booking them on marketing podcasts and e-commerce podcasts because those audiences were made up of people that wanted to generate more revenue and they wanted to diversify their income streams. And they ended up seeing a lot of results from those audiences. So again, this is a strategy that's not set it and forget it. There's an ongoing conversation around what are the types of shows that are going to be effective. Okay, if we kind of run this well dry, we've done everything we can in this category. What other types of shows are out there? There's over 1.7 million podcasts out there. So when people ask like, are there enough shows for me? Yes, there are enough shows. And having the strategy and the brainstorming and the ongoing support to make sure you can maximize every category that's available to you. So their results have been amazing. And also they leverage the affiliate model as well. They offer hosts the opportunity to be an affiliate partner for them. They are all about affiliate marketing. And it's so, so smart because when you have people that can effectively promote what you're doing, you give them a small commission, it's a win-win. So they get more visibility because these hosts are promoting their course and their program. They're getting a cut of the sale, and Jack and Michelle are able to grow their business. So again, win-win-win. And where these affiliate relationships start is them being a great guest on the host show. So I want you all to share in the chat, what is your revenue goal for your business this year, right? How many clients do you need to achieve that goal? It's so important that when you are setting out to grow your business, that you set a clear goal. If there is not a clear goal and not a clear intention of the results that you want to create, then, God, the universe doesn't know how to help you get there. So it's important that you have a clear goal that you're moving towards. So share in the chat. This is it's a live private training. It's only people that have been invited. So go ahead and share in the chat. Let us know. So Freya, amazing. 600,000 total sales. So Freya, let me know, let us know how many clients do you need to achieve that goal, right? How many clients do you have now? And then how many more do you need, right? What's the average value of a client? what is your program cost? So kind of do that math there. So we've got Barry, 10 per month, 3,000 per course. Scott, 400,000, 20 to 25 clients. Amazing. So once you do this math, this is so, so good. Now you have the numbers of how many people you need to close from this strategy. Amazing. 75 clients per year. And so I'm going to walk you all through in a few minutes, literally how you can break down reaching that goal by guesting on podcasts. So it's very exciting. We're going to do that in a moment. Okay, approximately 50 clients per year. Amazing. Fantastic. Does anyone else want to share what their revenue goal is and how many clients, how many sales do you need to close that? And keep in mind that when you up your positioning and as your business transforms and grows and evolves, you may see your price point grow throughout the year, which means you might need less clients than you think you do right now. So there's a lot of possibility and opportunity for growth with more ease and flow. Who would like to grow with more ease and flow? I know I do. So this is great. Thank you guys so much for sharing. All right, get excited. We are about to dive in to how to monetize the mic without the hassle or the hustle. This is our 3-part framework. This is literally how you ensure your success with podcast guesting. This is our 3-part framework. So here we go. So number 1 is strategy and support to monetize. So as I was sharing with the examples of the results of different clients in our program who are seeing, huge returns on their investment, they all happen because of the strategy and support to monetize. if you go out, I mean, think about it. If you go out onto like a basketball court to play basketball and you've never learned how to shoot, you've never learned how to dribble, you have no coaching, no strategy, you're not going to do that well unless you're some like crazy, miracle. But like you need coaching. You need to be guided in the little things. And I give you that example because my 8-year-old son who learned how to play basketball was able to coach me in how to dribble and shoot, and it worked. So it's oftentimes little tweaks from those who have the expertise, right? And so that is something that we add into what we do at Interview Connections, because like I shared with Nagina, she was doing podcasts for years. Like this was not the first time she'd ever been on a podcast, but because there wasn't any strategy around how to monetize, there wasn't any support in how to be a better guest. She just wasn't seeing any real results from those guest appearances. She really needed that strategy and support. And she was so great about being open to it. Like she would come to her strategy calls saying, okay, I know this can work. I love this strategy, but how do I monetize? Like, what do I need to do differently? So that is number one. Okay, so let's go over some myths and truths with strategy and support. So one myth is that a lot of people think I can only monetize my podcast interviews if the shows are big. We hear this all the time, and I am here to bust this myth. Okay. You can absolutely monetize targeted small to mid-range shows with a compelling message and an effective call to action. Now, when you are on a smaller podcast, maybe it has 100 listeners, maybe it has a couple hundred listeners, it is highly likely that a large percentage of that audience knows the host personally. And when the listeners know the host personally, there is a much higher level of trust with the host. Think about it. A show like Joe Rogan or Armchair Expert, one of these shows with millions of listeners, because I listen to Armchair Expert, it's a huge podcast. I like it. I enjoy it. But I don't know those hosts personally. They're celebrities, right? So when they recommend something, I'm not going to like run out and buy it right away because, we don't know each other personally. But when I listen to Kelly Roach's podcast and of course she's got like a top 10 marketing podcast, but I know her compared to Joe Rogan, that is a small to mid-range show. But because I know her personally, she is my business coach, I am likely to buy the things and invest in the things that she's promoting. I am very likely to buy the books of the guests that she's interviewing. There is a much higher level of trust. The same thing happens when people come on to Monetize the Mic. That is our podcast. I've been doing it since 2014. We have between 200 and 300 listeners per episode. It's a niche show. I know a lot of the listeners. I know our client Monique listens to every single episode because before she became a client, she had been listening to every single episode for at least 6 months. I know those listeners and they know me. And so when I recommend something, when I bring on a guest, I take that seriously. I know that if I'm going to bring a guest on the show and promote what they're doing, it means I believe in what they're doing and my listeners know that. So while being on a small to mid-range show might not bring you the volume of like listeners that you think you need, you'll actually be able to close leads from those shows at a much quicker pace than leads that come from a larger podcast, because the level of trust that listeners have with the host of a smaller podcast is much higher than listeners of a show that's really, really big hosted by a celebrity. Okay. The second myth of strategy and support to monetize is that I need new marketing systems in order to monetize my podcast interviews. Again, I hear this all the time. It's a huge myth. I'm here to bust it. You don't need to build out a marketing funnel before getting interviewed. You don't need to build a new website and write a bunch of emails and create a bunch of lead magnets. Like these are not things you need to do in order to monetize your podcast interviews. You can keep it simple and still see success. I can keep it simple and still see success. This is literally my mantra. I like to keep everything as simple as possible. I grew interview connections. Really we're building funnels like for the first time right now. I mean, over the last year or so is the first time we've really put focus into, marketing systems and funnels and things like that. We grew interview connections with no paid ads, right? Literally growing with organic marketing, podcast guesting, referrals, all the way up to 7 figures without fancy marketing systems. Like it was as simple as it could get. I hit our first 6 figures with like 200 people on my email list. So if you feel like in order to monetize, you need tons of systems and funnels, that is just not true. So don't let that be a consideration or reason that you're going to hold off on doing this, because you can go out there, give an amazing interview. Remember when Amy Law Liberty was on a podcast, she drove people to her Facebook group, but the listener who was ready to buy her 15K offer just went to her site and filled out the contact form and got on a call with her. Like he didn't go through some funnel and was nurtured for months. Like he's just like, okay, yeah, I'm going to hire you. And then got on the phone. So keep it simple. Another myth is I don't need coaching. I just need bookings. So this is also something I hear, and I get it for, if you're an entrepreneur, you've built your business really successfully, you've 6 or 7 or 8 figures in revenue, and you're like, yeah, I don't need any help, just give me booked. I can do it. And that is just not true, right? Everyone has room for improvement. The thing is, you don't know what you don't know, right? Like I don't doubt anyone's expertise in their business and in what they talk about, but you don't know what you don't know. There are blind spots and things with this strategy that are so simple that a tweak and a suggestion by somebody by a team, right, who's been doing podcast booking for 8 years can offer, right? So don't, buy into the myth that like, everything. And if you just show up on an interview, you'll see tons of results. Like it's absolutely possible to go on shows and magically like people just reach out and want to buy from you. But long-term, having this be a strategy that builds, that is your insurance policy, it future-proofs your business, it creates compounding revenue. You need to be open to that critique. You need to be open to excellence and committing to always getting better each and every interview that you do. So remember, you don't know what you don't know, and having an expert critique your interviews will truly maximize your results beyond what you could do on your own. Right. So when you have an expert listen to an interview and provide some feedback, and I know, cause I'll, we do interview audits, and sometimes, I'll listen to a client's interview and I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to find anything because they're crushing it. And there's always something little, like there's a lot of things they're doing really well. And I'm like, if you just made this tweak, like you'll improve your results a lot. And so you just always want to be open to improving each and every day. Nobody arrives at perfection. We are all striving for greatness each and every day. So that is the first part of the Monetize the Mic 3-part framework: strategy and support to monetize. The second part of the 3-part framework is consistency. You have to be consistent with podcast guesting. This is not a strategy that will work for you if you are putting your foot on the gas pedal and then taking it off and putting it on again. Like do a few interviews this month and then you get busy and you don't do it. And then you come back to it. Like if it's inconsistent, it's not going to really catch fire. It's not going to, you're not going to take off and see the results that are possible if you do commit to it. Like a marketing plan should have something that is getting done every single week, right? You get your social media posts every single week. You put out your podcast episode, you do your videos like on a weekly basis, like every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday. Like there is stuff that's just getting done, right? Like our marketing team knows like every day of the week, there's something that's getting done on our marketing. Like it is scheduled in. And so you have to be consistent. So what consistency looks like is an interview a week, 4 interviews a month. Right? So that's why our program, which I'll talk about in a little bit, is 48 interviews a year, because we want to see you doing 4 interviews a month, every single month for a year. So let's look at some of the myths and truths around consistency. So number 1, going on a few shows will tell me whether or not this will work for me. So again, this is a myth that I hear a lot that I am here to bust. a lot of times people will want to test it out, right? They'll say, well, can you just book me on like 10 or 12 shows? Because if I just do it for 3 months, I'll know if it works. And that might work for some other strategies. There might be other things in business that you can test out for a few months and know if it will work. Podcast guesting is a long-term strategy that produces compounding results over the course of years. I have been getting interviewed on podcasts consistently for 8 years, and it has created so much authority for Interview Connections. It has created such a strong global personal brand for me that, I had somebody reach out yesterday who I haven't talked to in years. And she said, I have been following your growth. I have loved watching your success. Like, that is authority. When you are consistently going on podcasts, when you are showing up and when you are visible on a weekly, on a monthly basis, every single year consistently, people watch. And then when they're ready to hire you, they reach out. And by the way, that person that reached out wanted to pay me to speak to her conference. So you literally, by being consistent and by showing up and not ever stopping, don't take your foot off the gas pedal, you will have opportunities that you just attract, right? So again, you can't test this, because by testing it for like a few months, you're saying, let's just see if I get lucky. And I'm one of those people that just like gets all the results in a few months. It just doesn't work like that. Another myth is I'll see results from podcast interviews I do shortly after they go live. So, and that's kind of goes again with the myth of like, if I just do this for a few months, I'll see results right away, and then I'll just know if it works. We see clients getting leads and sales from interviews they did months and years in the past. Podcast interviews are evergreen content, and there's so much you can do with every interview that you do. There's so many possibilities for how you can repurpose your interviews, right? Transcribing them, turning them into blog posts, posting them on LinkedIn, on your website, on Medium, right? Turning them into social media posts. There's people that will search and find your interviews that you did months or even years ago. So while there are definitely clients we have that see results right away. Like an interview goes live and you get a ton of people to your website and people reaching out right away. Typically it's a longer process. And the reason is, think about your own listening behavior, right? Think about if you listen to podcasts, what's your own practice? Like, I know there's podcasts that I subscribe to that come out on Wednesday. I don't always listen on Wednesday, right? Some of those podcasts that come out on Wednesday, I'm like, I listen over the weekend because I just got really busy. So sometimes a show will come out on a Monday and people are like, well, nothing happened. The show went live a few days ago and I haven't gotten anyone reaching out yet. And it takes time. Margy was interviewed on a podcast a few days before our virtual conference. And so there was an affiliate link for it in the show notes, and it went live, and it took a little bit of time. Like, it took a few days before we saw clicks on that affiliate link, because again, people are not listening to the show the minute it comes out. And sometimes they'll download it and they'll listen, and then they won't reach out to you until later. We recently had a lead reach out to us, and she literally told me, I had a call with her recently, and she said, yeah, I heard you on a podcast about a year ago. I wasn't ready when I heard you on a podcast, but I remembered you. I wrote your name down, and now I'm ready. So if you give up and just stop doing it after a few months because you didn't see results, and you stop being visible, those people that wrote your name down, they're going to forget you. But by being visible and by being consistent, when people are ready, they're going to reach out to you, because they're not going to have to go look for your name or try to figure out, who was that person I heard a year ago? You'll just be there. You'll just be on their radar. And then the third myth of consistency is that doing a podcast every week feels like a grind. And this happens sometimes, I'll say, 4 interviews a month, 48 for the year. Like, you've got to do it all the time. And some people are like, oh God, that feels like a lot. Having meaningful and fun conversations about the impact your business is having on the world can be energizing. And it only takes about an hour a week. Okay. This is fun, right? Ease and flow. If, growing your business by going on podcasts and just having conversations, that is not a grind. It's not sitting in a Google Doc and trying to come up with a blog post. Like, it's having fun. It's very, affirming, because the hosts are really generous and they're really kind and they position you really well. It's fun. Right. So, You can also schedule the interviews really strategically. So if you're someone that likes to batch produce your content, when you get booked on a podcast, you can choose a date and time to record it right around when all of your other interviews are. So I know our client, Jack Bosch, he likes to batch produce, right? So when he gets booked on podcasts, he'll have his assistant schedule them all for like the same day or within the same few days. So once a month, he's got a bunch of interviews right around the same day. And then he goes a few weeks and he doesn't have any. So you have the power and the control to schedule these interviews in a way that works for your schedule and the way you like to operate your schedule. So just really lean into how meaningful it is, the impact, how you're serving, and have fun building relationships. All right. The third part of the Monetize the Mic 3-part framework is staying in your zone of genius. This is incredibly important, not just for monetizing the mic and doing podcast guesting. This is critical for growing and scaling to new levels. So if you are stuck in your business, regardless of what level you're at, and you just can't figure out how to get to the next level, you need to really take a look and see, what am I doing that's not in my zone of genius? And I get that you can't just like take everything off of your list right away. There's a process to delegating and making sure that it gets done and that the right people are doing it, right? We didn't go from me doing everything to having 25 full-time employees overnight. It definitely takes time to like get in your zone of genius, but there's opportunities to, when you make the right investments, you can get in your zone of genius much, much quicker. Because when you have the response of like, oh, this feels like a grind, chances are you have a lot of things taking up your mental bandwidth that are making it so any extra thing does feel like a grind when it's not. So some myths and truth about this. Number one, I will save money by figuring this out on my own, right? We're always like, how can I save money? How can I save money? My revenue is not where I want it to be. How can I save money? I'll just do it myself. So it takes, let me tell you a little something about podcast booking. It takes hours and hours every week to research the right shows, pitch, and follow up. And all this time will be time you cannot work with clients or on higher revenue generating activities. So don't get caught in the trap of thinking if you just figure it out on your own, you'll save money, because you need to take a look at what your time is worth. What is your time worth? How do you value your time? I can have my assistant pitch me to podcast hosts. I shared about Jack and Michelle. This was their first thing. They were like, I'll have Barbara do it. You know, she can pitch us, no problem. This did not work because assistants typically don't have the skills to find the right shows, to pitch, to follow up, and really do the work it takes to have podcast booking be successful. And training and managing a team member on a task you aren't an expert in will be time consuming, it will be frustrating, and it'll eventually land you back where you started, right? So when you work with an agency to get this done for you, you never have to worry about like, oh gosh, you know, my assistant's on vacation. She's not meeting her metrics. I'm not getting booked on the right shows. She doesn't know who to reach out to, so she's asking me. It's a lot, right? So you definitely don't want to think like, oh, I'll just throw this on her plate or throw this on his plate. It doesn't really matter who I outsource my booking to. Be really careful about who you hand your reputation to. It will become a black hole of your time and mental bandwidth to outsource this work to someone you can't trust to represent your brand correctly, and will require micromanaging from you. And I say this very seriously because we're the leader in the podcast booking industry. We have friends who are podcast hosts, and they will forward pitches to us that they get, and they're poorly written. It's clearly not a fit. And it's just become so obvious that the person that is being pitched wanted to save money. They went to the cheapest booker they could find, and it's ultimately damaging their reputation. When you are having someone represent you to podcast hosts who are leaders, they are authority figures, they are influencers, You have to know that the person pitching you trust to do that. So this is not a strategy and a task that you want to try to save money on, that you want to just like go to the cheapest person and just like get it off your plate, because ultimately the stress of being pitched to the wrong shows, being blacklisted by podcast hosts that are like, I can't believe you got pitched to my show. We're not even a match. So that's ultimately going to cost you more time and money. Okay. Each part of this framework is powerful, but when you combine them, your growth potential is unlimited. So here's what the whole framework looks like together, right? So we have strategy and support to monetize, consistency with your podcast guesting, and staying in your zone of genius. When you have all three parts, you will have a global personal brand and reliable organic lead generation. So what is a global personal brand and how is it possible to get that with podcast guesting? Podcasts are hosted by people all over the world. This is not a strategy that is ideal if you only work with people in a certain state, in a certain town, right? In a certain country. Like if you only work in a specific geographic area, you can leverage podcast guesting to build your brand, but this is about building your global personal brand, being known by people, like whether it's, for us, obviously we're working with English speaking clients, right? But so it's like Australia, the UK, Canada, the United States, like I don't care where an entrepreneur is located. If they're in our target audience, they're going to know Interview Connections because we are global. There are no boundaries. There's no geographic boundaries around who we work with because people listen to podcasts all over the world. Ask any podcast host who's been podcasting for a while, if they look up their stats of where their listeners are, they have listeners in multiple countries around the world. You truly build a global personal brand when you use podcast guesting. And you also, when you have the strategy and support to monetize, when you're being consistent, when you are staying in your zone of genius, you have reliable organic lead generation. And what I mean by organic lead generation is you have warm, qualified leads that are reaching out to you from podcasts. People that hear a 30 to 45-minute deep dive conversation with you where you're sharing about your story, right? Where you're giving your expertise, where you're providing value, where you're conversing with a host that they know, like, and trust. The leads that reach out to you from those audiences are going to trust you. They are going to know you. They are coming to you pretty much ready to buy. Like they have a much deeper level of trust than somebody that just saw you on a Facebook ad and downloaded your lead magnet in 5 minutes, right? You have to work to nurture those leads a little bit more than the people that find you with podcasts. If you are missing any part of the Monetize the Mic framework, you will always struggle with being the best kept secret and will be stuck in the constant grind of finding new leads, right? If you are not podcast guesting consistently, if you're trying to do it yourself, or you're, getting frustrated trying to manage an assistant to do it for you, if you don't have the monetization strategies, you're always going to be stuck back like, oh my God, people still don't know who I am. I still can't get enough leads coming in for me to really grow to my revenue goals. And if you only have one or two parts of the Monetize the Mic framework, it's like speaking into a microphone without plugging it in. And you'll notice my microphone in this picture is not plugged in. No one is going to hear you, and you will put a lot of effort without seeing results. We don't like putting a ton of effort into something if we're not going to see results. So you definitely, if you're going to do podcast guesting, you need to have the full framework in place in order to see results and have the effort you put into podcast guesting really work, right? So what if you have strategy and support to monetize, right? You know how to monetize, you have the support, you have the consistency, but you're not in your zone of genius. That is going to lead to burnout and decreased sales. If you have been in a place where you are not in your zone of genius and you are in the grind of doing things that you ultimately should not be doing, right? Maybe you're pitching yourself and you're getting yourself booked and you're using the right call to action. but you're not in your zone of genius because you're doing all the pitching and booking yourself, you are eventually going to burn out, and you're going to see a decrease in sales because you're going to feel so busy and overwhelmed that you're like, I don't even want to do a sales call because I'm so overwhelmed. I'm so burnt out, right? So you're being consistent. You have the strategy, but because you're not in your zone of genius, you're burned out, right? And so you actually start to repel leads. People actually feel the energy that you put out. It's kind of crazy how energy works, because if you're not in your zone of genius and you're spending a ton of time on tasks that are not your zone of genius that you should be delegating, and you're getting frustrated and burned out, literally it will be like just picture a spigot with water flowing out of it, and those are your leads. It'll literally be like you turned off the spigot, because people don't want to talk to someone that's burned out. They don't want to talk to somebody that is frustrated and feels like they're spinning a million different plates in the air. You've got to be in your zone of genius if these other two things are going to work. Okay, let's say you're in your zone of genius, right? You are delegating like a queen or a king. You're doing amazing. You're like, I am in flow. I'm being consistent, but my call to action is terrible. And I am not talking about my work well on the podcast. Like, you're just not doing a great job on the interviews. There's not a lot of strategy going into monetizing. You're going to have great positioning because people are going to see you getting interviewed all the time, but you're not going to have predictable revenue. Right? There might be some up and down. Maybe you get lucky, you get someone reaching out, but it's not going to lead to the predictable lead and revenue growth that could be there if you were in your zone of genius and you were being consistent and you have the strategy and support to monetize. So you need all three parts. You cannot just have two. Let's say you are in your zone of genius, right? You are delegating. You are not grinding on tasks that you should not be doing. You have strategy and support to monetize, but you're not being consistent, right? So maybe every couple of months, you pitch yourself, you get on a great show, woo, and you give a great call to action, a great interview, but then 2 months goes by and you're not on any shows. And you're like, okay, I gotta, hey, person, like, book me on a couple shows. Amazing. Do some great interviews. But then it's inconsistent. You can't rely on a strategy that's not consistent. So you're getting inconsistent results. And that's not something that you can really rely on as you're scaling to these revenue goals that you set out to achieve. So as you can see, when you have all three parts, when you have the strategy and support to monetize, you have consistency, you have staying in your zone of genius, you will create your global personal brand and reliable organic lead generation. So let's look at a few different places where you could potentially be stuck in business. So this is something that we see a lot with folks that come to podcast guesting, right? So your revenue is inconsistent and you don't have time for marketing because you're busy working in your business to work on the growth of your business. So what we typically see, if you look at this, the calendar months of the year, you might get a couple referrals and your revenue goes up. But then you get really busy with clients and you have no time for marketing, so your revenue goes down again. But then your clients renew, right? You have some coaching clients who renew their accounts with you and your revenue goes up again. But then it's summertime, you get busy with kids, the kids are home from school, and you're like, I got to take a little hiatus. I got to stop. I got to deal with these kids and their camp and all this. So your revenue goes down, right? Does anyone have a summer dip that they can relate to? But then it's the fall, people are getting excited. So you get some referrals and your revenue goes up. But then it's the holiday and your revenue goes down again, right? So this is a place that a lot of people can relate to, where you're just sort of going up and down. When you don't have the consistency of visibility from podcast guesting, you're just at the mercy of the seasons of the year, right? And that is a place where you're not in control. And if you're not in control of your growth, you're eventually going to burn out. This is another place that entrepreneurs get stuck, right? So perhaps you've plateaued at mid to high six figures. You've grown successfully to this point with social media marketing, with referrals, renewals, and upsells, but you're stuck and haven't been able to break through to the 7-figure mark. So what typically that means is you've really grown, but you've done as much as you can with your social media, with referrals, with renewals, with upsells. And you're like, if I'm going to get to 7 figures, I need more traffic. I need people. I need to be in front of other people's audiences to break through, because this just isn't enough to get me over the 7-figure mark. Or you get stuck here. You've grown an already successful 7 or 8-figure company. You know it's time to focus on building a personal brand that can stand the test of time. Or you're pivoting into a new industry and you don't know where to start. And this is where you want to be. You want your leads and revenue to consistently rise. As you get more leads, you get more revenue, right? You don't want to be caught in the trap of, okay, I'm going to throw a ton of money at Facebook ads. Woo, tons of leads. I have so many leads, but they're all really cold leads. They don't have trust because they don't know you. And then you're spinning your wheels with a much lower sales call close rate because these leads are all very cold, right? But when you go on podcasts as a guest expert, you have you're consistently increasing your leads that are actually closing at a higher rate because they know you. They're pre-qualified, they're warm, they have trust in you. So your revenue is going up and you're enjoying the process of closing these sales and signing these clients on because they're coming to you saying like, I heard you on a podcast and it was awesome. And thank you so much for providing so much value. I can't wait to work with you. Okay. So how do I actually use podcast interviews to create visibility that strengthens my personal brand and generates consistent organic leads? Contrary to popular belief, the time you spend on gaining visibility is not proportionate to the results you create from that visibility. The interviews you do now will pay dividends for months and years in the future. So this is a strategy unlike advertising, where when you turn on Facebook ads, okay, you're getting impressions, you're getting people clicking through to your website, maybe you're getting leads converting onto your email list, but when you turn those ads off, they're done. Like those ads aren't just on working for you after you're done paying for them. But when you do an interview, so much is now happening because of that interview. It's not proportionate to the time that you're on the interview. So let's look at, what you do with podcast interviews and then what your team can do. So what you do is in blue. Okay. So let's just say this is a sample calendar week. You have a podcast interview, right? Once a week. You do that podcast interview. Like I said, it's probably 30 minutes to an hour. I usually say just block an hour. Most of my interviews, I'm on and off in 30 minutes, right? But sometimes, you want to have extra time to chit chat with the host in the green room before or after the recording. So let's just say 1 hour a week, you've got a podcast interview. And then you want to have a little time to prep for a podcast interview. That's all that you're doing with podcast guesting. And so what does the prep look like? This is very simple. You don't want to overthink this. The prep that I do, that I recommend, is I want to look up who the host is. I want to understand what their business is, who they are, what their background is. So basically, looking them up on social media, reading about their business, listening to their podcast. And you can do that while you're doing other things. You can listen to their podcast while you're in the car, while you're working out, while you're getting ready in the morning. So the prepping is a pretty passive thing that you're doing, and then do the podcast. And then what your team does is they're promoting it on social media. So we've got Cam here, our marketing team, and, he'll post the podcast on social media. I'm not spending time doing that, but it's being done for me. And then your team is scheduling new interviews. So when we book you on a podcast, your administrative assistant can schedule the interview. So that way you just show up and just join the Zoom room, you do a little prep, and then you just show up. So it's not a lot of time, but stuff is getting done for you. So let's look at what you do, what your team does, and then what is happening passively, right? So this again, just a sample calendar of a week, right? A podcast goes live. and you have new leads discovering old interviews. So, right, let's say you did a podcast many months ago or a year ago, and you've got people discovering old interviews, and then leads are coming in from those interviews. You got your team promoting you on social media. We've got leads coming in. We have new fans following you, right? As you're promoting your interviews, as you're getting interviewed and being posted about on the host social media, now you have new fans following you. We've got the prepping for the podcast interview and the podcast interview. And then clients listening to your interviews. So this is huge. You know, we always post our interviews that we do in our client Facebook group and recommend them to our clients. And it's great for client retention because your clients can get to know you, right? And they develop even more trust in you. And then you've got scheduling new interviews. So as new interviews are coming in, you have your assistant scheduling them. You have new people joining your community. And then you have more interviews going live, more leads coming in, fans liking and commenting. So what you do is the podcast interview and some prep. Your team is promoting and scheduling interviews. And then there's all this stuff that's happening passively that's creating results. And your visibility won't become a 10 out of 10 overnight. So let's break down what your progress can look like over the next 12 months. So this is basically a calendar of what's possible for you. So in months 0 to 3 of starting your podcast guesting journey, you're getting interviewed. And then what's happening for you is that interviews are getting booked, your network is growing, and you're gaining confidence. The more you network, the more you get visible, the more you get interviewed, the more you're more confident. So your visibility is maybe at a 0 out of 3 in this first phase. And then in the second phase, months 3 to 6, you're getting interviewed, you're clarifying your messaging. This is something that almost all of our clients share, is that the more they get interviewed, the more they clarify their messaging. And so what ends up happening is that more interviews are going live, more interviews are getting booked, your network is growing, and hosts are turning into leads and referral partners. And I know we have some clients that are going to be sharing about how they have converted hosts into clients and referral partners. And so as that happens, your visibility goes up. It goes, maybe it's a 3 to 5 out of 10. And then the next phase, months 6 to 9, now you're really building momentum. You're continuing to get interviewed. You're closing warm leads, maybe leads that reached out to you in the first, half of the year. They're now starting to become your clients. And so again, what's happening behind the scenes? More interviews are getting booked. More interviews are going live. Your network is continuing to grow. You're gaining even more confidence. You're like, I'm getting interviewed every week. People are becoming my client. This is amazing, right? Your confidence is growing. Your positioning is increasing. You're now developing a lot of authority in the marketplace. So you're now attracting opportunities because you have authority in your industry. Your positioning is increasing and you're attracting opportunities and leads. You are now attracting. You're not just going out and getting opportunities. They're now coming to you. So your visibility is closer to a 5 to 8 out of 10. And then in months 9 through 12, you're continuing to get interviewed, you're closing your new warm leads. And what's happening? More interviews are getting booked. More interviews are going live. Your network is growing. You're gaining confidence. Your positioning is increasing and you're attracting opportunities and leads. And your visibility is now getting from 8 to 10 out of 10. Right? This is what progress can look like over the course of committing to podcast guesting for a year. The time you are spending on podcasts is the same every month, but the results you create increase significantly throughout the year. And generally, we see entrepreneurs pitching and booking themselves on podcasts or having a team member do it. They or their team member get overwhelmed by the amount of work and time it takes to research podcasts and pitch hosts and follow up and book interviews. They end up quitting around phase 2. If you're trying to do this yourself, it's just generally you're probably going to give up before you hit that momentum of the 12 months. So again, here is what's possible. I just want you to look at this again. You're getting interviewed, you're getting interviewed, you're getting interviewed, getting interviewed. And then what's happening? More interviews are getting booked, right? You're getting more confidence. Hosts are turning into leads and referrals. Your positioning is increasing. all this stuff that is actually happening because of you getting interviewed increases, but the time you're spending getting interviewed is not going up, right? So the effort and the time you put into it is not proportionate to the results. The results are much higher than the actual time you're putting into it. So what results can you see in your business from this consistent visibility? So for this example, we want to break down how to generate 6 figures in revenue from podcast guesting this year. So if one client is worth 10K in your business, gaining 10 clients from podcast guesting in the next 12 months would generate $100,000 in revenue. So let's look at 4 ways to generate 10 new clients from podcast interviews. Number 1, 10 hosts who interview you become your client. Number 2, 10 listeners reach out and become your client. Number 3, 5 hosts and 5 listeners become your client. And number 4, 10 hosts each refer 1 new client to you. So really simple, generating 100,000 in sales from podcast guesting is actually very simple once you break it down and see, it's only 5, 10 people. And by going on a show a week, you'll be interviewed by 48 to 52 hosts per year. So converting 20% of these hosts into a sale is 10 new clients. So can you convert 20% of the hosts that you have a deep dive conversation with that are really qualified potential customers? Going on 48 to 52 shows per year exposes you to anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000 targeted listeners. You would only have to convert 0.001% of those listeners to hit your goal of 10 new clients. So let's look at some real entrepreneurs who generated at least 100,000 in revenue from podcast guesting. So our client who has a certified financial planning firm, 250,000 in sales by converting 32 listeners into clients. Our client who owns a digital marketing agency, we actually have several clients like this who have the same result. 1 listener reached out, signed on with their agency, which was a $100,000 contract. And our client who owns a real estate investing coaching company invited hosts to become an affiliate for their course and generated enough traffic from their promotions to close $250,000 in revenue. So by taking all of the legwork off your plate, you can focus on having great conversations, delivering value, connecting with your audience, building momentum, and enjoying the compounding returns of your evergreen visibility. So let's just do a quick recap. First, you learned today that in order to build a global personal brand and generate reliable, warm leads, you need to be guesting on podcasts consistently. Next, you learned how the 3-part Monetize the Mic framework generates those results, right? We've got the framework. You need all 3 parts: strategy and support to monetize, consistency, and staying in your zone of genius. Then you saw examples of how different business owners created 6 figures in revenue from podcast guesting. It's important to see what's possible so you can set out to create the results that you want to create. So now you see how monetizing the mic works, but in order to create these results in your business, you need these 3 things, right? You need strategy and support to monetize. You need to be getting booked consistently on the right shows, and you need to stay in your zone of genius. And that means not doing this yourself. And that means not spending mental time and bandwidth outsourcing it to someone that's unqualified and untrained to do it. And so I just want to give you this iceberg picture, because oftentimes we see the successful entrepreneurs, they're closing high ticket sales, they're everywhere, they're getting interviewed, right? But you don't see below the iceberg, right, is all the research for the shows, the pitching, following up, the interview audits, the community support, right? Support with messaging, having a good one sheet, message tweaking, call to action, adjustments. There is a lot that happens below the tip of the iceberg that you just see on the highlight reel, like on social media. So don't miss a tiny detail that can sabotage your entire year of podcast guesting. So I just want to give you a quick example of one little tiny detail that could sabotage your results: using the wrong call to action. We have a client in our Monetize the Mic program who's getting guaranteed consistent visibility as a guest on podcasts. And she has a successful six-figure coaching business. She has a great offer, but there was one tiny detail that almost sabotaged her results. In one of our monthly strategy calls, we reviewed her call to action and discovered that it was an offer that was not going to effectively convert podcast listeners into leads, right? We advise you to use a free call to action, a free offer, and she was pitching a course that was hundreds of dollars. And I said, that's not going to convert. You've got to give people like a free offer. And so we immediately guided her on creating a new call to action that would convert at a much higher rate. This is why ongoing strategy and support with your interviews is critical. Having a team to point out your blind spots and help you course correct is key. This is why we created our Monetize the Mic program. We are the only podcast booking service on the market that will book you on the right podcasts, provide you with the strategies and support for monetizing the mic, audit your interviews to help you hone your interview skills, and plug you into a supportive community of other 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs who are also investing in their visibility. So what is it like to work with Interview Connections? Number one, communication. This is one of our core values. We have check-ins with your dedicated booking agent every single week. They are checking in with you, giving you a recap of what's happening on your account. Client networking calls. So every Friday, we have a networking call where clients can come on, give their elevator pitch, share any resources that they're looking for. Clients all the time will share with me that they're doing connect calls with people that they're meeting on those networking calls, and opportunities are being created from those conversations. Strategy calls. So our client success strategist does monthly strategy calls, and that's where we're doing those interview audits. We're offering those tweaks on your call to action, helping you course correct, updating your messaging. This is an evolving, ongoing strategy, and we're consistently communicating with you to help you see success. And we also have office hours. So there's time for you to come on Zoom with our team to get your questions answered and to get that added level of support so you can see success. Also, training and support. So like I said, we do office hours. So every month we're sending out a training to you on a specific topic related to podcast guesting. And then our leadership team has office hours where they're able to answer questions and guide you around that specific training. So we're not going to just feed you a fire hose of information and have you figure it out. Like, we're going to give you these trainings and the space to talk about them and make sure you fully understand and know how to implement on them. We do hot seat coaching, which I love. I go on Facebook Live with clients and answer their questions and help them have a breakthrough in an area that they're stuck on with their podcast guesting or business growth. And we do interview audits. So if you're feeling like I'm just not monetizing, what's going on, you can have our client success team listen to one of your interviews and provide time-stamped feedback on how you can improve. Also, this is a done for you service, right? So we will create your podcast one sheet for you and book you on 48 guaranteed podcasts. So our team is doing the work to find the right shows, to pitch you and book you on those shows. So let's look at your journey as a guest expert with Interview Connections. So month one is our discovery process and immediate access to networking calls. So we'll spend the first month getting to know you, creating your podcast one sheet, and getting clear on your show criteria. So we have a full discovery call to really understand your business, your target audience. Like, we need to get from your brain into our brain everything about your business so we can accurately represent you, the demographic, the psychographic of your target market, what are the results you want to create, tell us about you personally. Like, we really do a deep dive to get to know you so we can accurately represent you. We create your podcast one sheet, and then we have a call to go over show criteria. So we will advise you on, hey, based off of all of our research, these are the types of shows that we're going to go after. Is there anything you want to add to this? Anything we need to tweak or change? And immediately you have access to our client networking calls. So your network starts growing right away. We want you to see results right away. Literally, the moment somebody becomes a client, I'm like, I'm adding you into our networking group, our Facebook networking group, so you can post and start making connections right away. Month 2, we start pitching and booking you on podcasts. So in month 2, you will continue to attend client networking calls and begin to schedule your interview recording. So we start pitching you in month 2 after we've laid the groundwork and the foundation with the discovery process. And so you start getting connected with hosts in month 2. And every week you're coming on the networking calls. Again, your network is growing every single week that you're meeting clients on those networking calls. And then month 3 through 12, that is where you watch your visibility soar. Here is when your momentum really picks up. So by month 3, you have consistent recordings on your calendar. And between months 3 and 5, your first few interviews will start going live. And our clients typically start seeing leads and new clients come from podcast interviews between months 6 and 12. So there is that lead up time, right? You have your discovery and intake work in month 1. You're starting to schedule your recordings in month 2. And then between month 3 and 5, they're starting to go live. And then 6 through 12 is where the momentum and the results really start to compound. And the reason the Monetize the Mic program is a full 12 months is because podcast guesting is a long-term relationship building strategy. Profitable relationships and effective networking is not an overnight or silver bullet solution to your revenue goals. You cannot find, nurture, and have relationships that produce results for you overnight. It takes time. Committing to a full 12 months of consistent podcast guesting will create the momentum you need to have multiple touch points with new leads and effectively attract and close the clients you need to hit your revenue goals. And I want to just really focus on consistent multiple touch points. Leads need to hear from you more than once. We have our client, Paul Ross, shares that he had a lead that heard him on a podcast years ago, loved the interview, set up a Google alert. So every time he was on a podcast, that lead would listen to it. And years later, signed up for his $18,000 program, right? So leads need to be touched multiple times to ultimately make that high ticket investment in your services. So if you just do an interview once, maybe they like it, but that's not enough for them to make the investment. You have to show up. You have to be consistent. So let's look at what results you can generate inside the Monetize the Mic program. Month 1, you attend our client networking calls and schedule one-on-one connect calls with other clients you meet. And then one of those clients signs up for your program. This has happened multiple times. We have clients that meet on a networking call. They're like, let's connect. And then they connect on a call and then they become each other's client. Month 2, you schedule your first 4 interviews and connect with those hosts on social media. Those hosts are sharing about you on social media and you're gaining new followers. So now you're seeing your social proof and your social media start to grow because you have these hosts that are now sharing about you and knowing about you. Month 3, you're getting booked on 4 interviews a month and promoting your interviews as they get booked. Listeners are joining your email list, applying to work with you, and at least 4 listeners invest in your high ticket offer. Most of our clients who see a return on investment do so by converting just one host, one listener, or a fellow entrepreneur they meet on a networking call into their program. And each part of the program is worth the entire investment alone. So for example, one person you meet on a client networking call can become a client or a referral partner that generates your return on investment. The podcast one sheet we create for you can be used to get referral partners and other speaking opportunities. The interview audits we do can be the difference between you putting listeners to sleep and you showing up so powerfully that listeners can't wait to reach out to you. And the podcast hosts we connect you with can turn into real high ticket clients. The caliber of the clients we work with is so high that the client networking calls alone are worth the entire investment. And I believe this very strongly because I have personally invested in being a part of networking groups because I want to make sure that I'm in a community of entrepreneurs at the 6- and 7-figure level. And that is what you get on the client networking calls. Our clients are amazing. We hear it all the time. They're like, oh my God, the caliber of people, they're all so kind, they're successful. They all want to support one another. That is a community that is going to pay dividends. I know there are networking communities worth 10, 20,000 or more just for networking. And you get that as a part of this program. These are just some examples. Our client Chala, she said, this is gold. Thank you. Getting so much more than podcast bookings here. That's exactly it. This is not like just bookings. You're getting so much more than that with the community. Roy. So Roy shared, he's been a client of us since April. He's already made enough money from his podcast interviews to pay for the whole program. So I love that. So how much is your obscurity costing you, right? Obscurity, if people don't know who you are, how much is it costing you for people to not know who you are? Obscurity is the most dangerous thing for an entrepreneur. Every day that passes where people don't know who you are is another day when leads are going to your competition and not to you. How much time and effort are you putting into finding new clients? How much time and energy is that worth? And also another question, how much time and effort are you spending stressing over how nobody is coming to you to hire you? How much time and how much is that stress worth, right? How much is that costing you? The Monetize the Mic program is not for everyone. We create magic with clients who share the following core values. Communication. As your podcast booking agency, we need to get to know you at a deep level so we can fully represent you and match you with the best host so you can attract ideal high-ticket clients. This requires communication about your story, your business, and expertise, and ongoing communication about how the interviews are going so we can make any necessary tweaks to our outreach. Kindness. Podcast interviews are all about providing value and having a mindset to serve. We only work with clients who share this mindset and treat their clients, colleagues, and our team with kindness. Integrity. Integrity is all about following through on your commitment and honoring your word. This program is only for entrepreneurs who follow through on their word and honor their commitments. Kristen Bowen, she owns an incredible company called Living the Good Life Naturally. And she shared on Facebook, she said, did I tell you because the podcast that you're getting me on, I just finished two summits, one with 80,000 enrolled and the other with 500,000 enrolled. No words for the work you do. Life change. Best decision I've ever made for the growth of my company. And Kristen shared with me, and she shared publicly as well in videos that we've done together. She's been burned, right? Before she signed up with us, she had just been burned by a PR agency who totally wooed her in the sales process. And once she became a client, she's like, it was so disappointing. So that might be you. You might have made an investment before and been burned. And you're like, am I just going to be wooed? And no, Kristen will tell you, best decision she's ever made. We really treat our clients like family, and we follow through on this service. And with the summits, we're not booking her on summits, we're booking her on podcasts, but those podcasts are doors that are being opened to so many other opportunities. And summit speaking opportunities are just one of those. The investment, the Monetize the Mic program is $1,750 a month for 12 months or $20,000 pay in full. So let's get started. $1,750 a month or $20,000 pay in full is the investment for this program. So you can join the Interview Connections family now at interviewconnections.com/start now. We will put that link in the chat. Interviewconnections.com/start now is where you can join us and get started on your podcast guesting journey. So join us, go to interviewconnections.com/start now. The investment is $1,750 a month for a year or $20,000 pay in full.